Hello, I'm Robert Timon. I'm the founder of Frame. Welcome to the live jury session of the Frame Awards for the month of February. Today we will, for the first time, reveal the winners of last month's Frame Awards competition. In previous months, the winners had already been announced on the Frame website. Today we've decided to introduce a moment of surprise and reveal the winners here at this very moment, at this very stage. So thank you for tuning in and finding out who this month's 4 honorable mentions and Interior of the Month winners will be. Let me take you through today's program. Firstly, I would like to introduce the jury panel for the month of February to you. Out of this 15 people strong jury panel, we now have with us 5 people from all over the globe. After that, we will be looking at the 4 honorable mentions for the month of February and reveal the interior of the month. And you will get to know why these projects have ranked so highly last month. And last but not least, we will try to get some trends out of our jury panel, because they've seen roughly 80 projects last month, and I'm sure there have been some overarching trends that they have been seeing. And you're very welcome to jump into the discussion. Please use the Q&A button on Zoom or the chat functionality to interact with us and to ask the jury specific questions if you like. So this is last month's jury panel, 15 people from all over the world, from all kinds of ages, professional backgrounds, minority groups are included. We are striving towards gender neutrality. In every respect, we try to be as inclusive and diverse as possible. Today, we have 5 people here with us, and those people are Annika Hülser. She's the head of interior architecture at HBP Architekten in Germany. Martin Mostbeck, founder and director of his namesake studio in Vienna. Bill Boucher, he's the principal and director of interiors at HOK and based in Los Angeles. Tola Ojolape, she's a senior project designer at Selina and based in the UK. And Kate Shepard, she's co-founder and strategic director at the Future Collective, also based in the UK. So welcome, jury members. Please unmute and switch your video on. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Well, great to have you here. Thanks for making time to share your insights of last month's jury duty with our audience. Please shortly introduce yourself. Kate, who are you? What are you working on? Please share that with the audience.
So, hi, yeah, my name's Kate. I'm the co-founder of a creative consultancy called the Future Collective, and we specialise in branding, brand design, brand experiences, and to be honest, at the moment with the pandemic, our focus, although retail design has been passion of mine all of my career, we've actually shifted our focus a great deal to brand identity design at the moment. So working with a number of different people in different sectors, startups in tech industries, beauty industry, and really just helping them to express the brand in whatever form that might take. So exciting times, actually.
Thank you, Kate. Tola, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Tola Ojolape. I'm a senior project designer at Selina. Selina is a Latin American hospitality brand who have diversified their portfolio in the UK, and I have just completed the design for their Brighton location, and we're looking at Bath and Cardiff this year. And yeah, that's what I do currently.
Thank you, Tola. You represent, let's say, the client perspective in this jury. Martin, how are you?
Hi there, my name is Martin Mosbeck. I'm an architect and designer based in Vienna. Yeah, we have a studio with we do small projects and big ones. We do from social or housing projects. Like you can see in the background, that's one of the latest projects we did in Vienna, a housing project with about 55 units.
That's impressively looking, Martin. Thank you. Bill, what about you? You're based in LA.
Yes, good morning, Robert and esteemed jury members. I'm Bill Boucher, and I'm with HOK as a design director, and I'm currently working with teams in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. And in our New York office, we have 2 headquarters projects that have resumed design, development, and construction. And so these projects hope to complete and actually reoccupy at the end of 2021 or early 2022. So we're helping those clients pivot what that experience will be in tandem with the completion of the built environments we designed for them. We've just completed working on an experience design for an American manufacturer of flooring, but it's one that rolls up inclusivity, diversity with an emphasis on the needs of the neurodiverse population. And that hopes to be a virtual experience that rolls out this fall as part of the American Neocon program as a virtual conference in October of 21. And currently involved in helping reposition the arrival experience of some buildings, public lobbies, amenity spaces for some properties here in Los Angeles, which is a very vital kind of activity in a preparation and readiness for those tenancies to come back to those properties at the end of this pandemic in a post-pandemic world, because preparation seems to be a bigger emphasis at this time than the learnings that we've had. So it's nice to be a part of things that have projects that have some hope and optimism to them that correlate to the time frame of the next year of our lives.
Thank you, Bill. And Annika, hailing from Germany.
Hi, everybody. Hi from Düsseldorf in Germany. Yeah, my name is Annika Hölzer. I'm head of interior architecture here at HPP Architects. And we are a big architecture firm working on diverse projects. In interior design, often office design concepts, office planning, but also in retail design and cultural architecture. Can be all kinds of different projects and project sizes. And yeah, happy to be with you and discuss the February jury results.
Thank you very much, panel. Well, there we go. Are you ready for the first reveal? And that's the first honorable mention. First honorable mention goes to a project in Paris. It's the collective spaces of the Van Cleef & Arpels offices in Paris, designed by Constance Guisset Studio. It's submitted in the small office category. And as you can see, it ranks pretty highly on creativity. And the other criteria quite high as well. So let's have a look at this project. And Constance, congratulations winning this honorable mention. Let's have a look at this project, and then I will ask each of you a question so the audience will understand better why you think this project deserves an honorable mention. So as you can see, it's a small workspace. It's not one of these big offices. And first question I wanted to ask you, Annika. This project is quite new. What does it say about the status quo of the workplace? What does it say about the future of the workplace? If you look at these images, if you try to dive into this project.
Yeah, this was one of my favorites as well. So I'm glad that it made it so far. I very much like the way of treating this small space and implementing the daylight into this center piece, which with its sculptural staircase, and it's a meeting place, and it's still like large, though there's not a lot of space. it's full of air and softness and daylight, and that's what I liked about it. And I think that's very important as well for future workplace design, is to implement such qualities such as the daylight, and make create atmospheres that people like to stay in and to communicate and to meet each other. And I think this is very important for workplace design. And as well, like the whole project has a delicate softness, which is achieved by the materials and the use of the light. And yeah, that's why I very much like this project.
Thank you, Annika. Martin, this project uses a very specific palette of colors and materials. What can you say about that palette?
I liked it because the colors are very well combined, and I think that they create. I like, you know, if you judge a project like this, I liked it from the very beginning, yeah, and I like the creation and the combination of the colors very much, because I think with this color concept and the big skylight from above, it creates a very, very nice atmosphere to work in. And I would say it would be, for me, also a place to work there in person. That's my point of view, my kind of criteria.
Thank you. I think that's a big compliment. Tola, offices need to embed the DNA of the organization they serve. So is this the case here with the client, the jewelry brand Van Cleef & Arpels, based in Paris? How does this reflect the culture, the DNA of this very specific Parisian brand?
I think evidently they do not want it to look like a normal office space. They want it to feel very much like an extension of the brand. And I think they've been able to achieve that through a lot of the materials and the warmth that they've created in the space. I think it also shows, like with the world that we're living in, that people want spaces that are almost like an extension of kind of where they live. So bringing in warm materials. I think interestingly, what makes a space really successful is the fact that it feels quite fluid. There are a lot of curves. It does not feel very straight. And I think that naturally we kind of adapt to that very well. And that might speak of the brand also. So I think that's one of the key successes of this space, is that attention to detail in kind of making it very fluid, very curvaceous, the kind of warm tones. Yeah, and I think all of that kind of make it feel very human. And I guess for a clothing brand, that works and synergizes very well.
Yeah, it's a very sophisticated take on shapes, materials, and colors. It's not shouting in any sort. Thank you, Tola. Bill, you work on a lot of projects, office projects in the States. Could this office have been designed for an American company in the States?
It could have been, but for a progressive company, perhaps one that is consumer brands in its nature, like Van Cleef & Arpels. But I think how this differentiates it is that there is no floor plan needed. When you see the imagery of the two-story spaces, it's evident that there's no circulation space, so no corridors. And the enclosed spaces on the lower level open directly up into a community space, a town hall. So it's instant community and instant gathering, which I think is a hark, that's an echo of what I think people are looking for when they return to the workplace post-pandemic. But more importantly, I feel like this project represents a new classic. There are many motifs and details that are classical in nature, from the ribs to the curves to the very subtle detailing. But contrast is used quite well. The entry space upon arrival takes you into a dark chamber, and then darkness represents communal elements throughout the two-story space. But I think the other beautiful quality of this space that we all find so visually appealing and attractive is that it's lyrical. The module of the railing design is repeated in the fronts of the spaces on the rooms below, which then open up to another iteration of that pattern language on the back walls of some of those rooms. And so I think that pattern language being repeated throughout key areas visually reinforced this overall experience as lyrical and moving.
Thank you, Bill. Kate, we've been talking about beauty here a lot, and the Frame Awards are not a beauty contest. We want to steer clear from that. But why is it so difficult in this case not to speak about aesthetics?
Do you know, I think I've just written down, I was thinking there's something about the colour and the materiality of this space that completely influences people's behaviour. I think, you know, someone was just saying how you instinctively know that the library space is somewhere where you're going to sit quietly and you're going to really study things. And obviously there's an area that's much more communal. And I think, you know, the aesthetics really do, it's all intrinsically linked to how you actually feel within the space. It's interesting because I was looking, I presented a week before lockdown last March. I presented to a client the trends in workplace design, and one of them was this idea of creating a home from home. So actually sort of like using fabrics and colours that actually we would generally see within a residential space, but actually using that in a workspace to create somewhere you would really like to be and spend time. And I think that's only going to be I think people are going to be really keen to stay at home. You know, they're actually kind of quite liking a new way of working, and it's actually design's role, I think, to lure people back and to create that balance, because I think there's a lot about working together at times that can really help a project. But I thought it was beautiful. It reminded me of how they do the retail environments as well. You know, as a brand, they're just, their attention to detail, the craftsmanship, really artful. It's yeah, I think it's very worthy of an honourable mention here today because it's beautiful.
Here you go. That sums it up for the first honorable mention, which goes to Constance Guisset Studio. Let's have a look at the second honorable mention, and that is for Villa 5050 by Studio 9 Dots from the Netherlands. This is a residential project. It's a house with a very thoughtful relationship between interior and exterior, which ranks quite exceptionally high on innovation and creativity. As you can see, a pretty high score, 7.45 in total. So what can the jury say about this project? Annika, to begin with you again. If I look at this project, I find it difficult to speak about the interior without speaking about the exterior. So is that even possible?
Yeah, this project is so special because the limits between interior and exterior, they seem to vanish. Each space, I mean, like the way of treating the functional layout with this modular grid system they applied is already interesting, I think, by itself, but they achieved as well to place the functions and create privacy for each functional space, and yet a direct connection always to the nature and to the surroundings by the huge amount of transparency in the facade and as well the interior courtyards. So basically, this is, no, you cannot really distinguish it between inside and outside. I think it becomes like one whole unit, and it implements very well in the natural surroundings. I think that is what makes the project so beautiful and so, yeah, inspiring. This one, for example, with the opening towards the sky, again, like into the centerpiece, you have this amount of sunlight coming in and the nature coming from the ground going up. So it's like connected in all directions, inside and outside, vertical and horizontal. Very beautiful.
Thank you again, Annika. Martin, Annika mentioned that it's woven with the nature, this project. So it's nature is interwoven with the architecture here, which makes it seem, let's say, more sustainable than a house in which this is not happening. But that's only a gesture in this case. What can you say about the sustainability of this project, as far as you can read from the text submitted by the design studio?
Yeah, in this case, what we can say about the sustainability is that the use of materials is it seems to be sustainable. The use of concrete, for example, or these kind of all these glass panels, this is kind of material that you can reuse, or you can bring into a recycling process after the building is kind of not more in use in the far future, of course, because I think it's this design is it is, for me, it is not, it doesn't have anything to do with kind of short fashionable thinking. It's clear architecture. It's, for me, it's a good, and it's a very, very good interpretation of a case study house, for example, a modern and contemporary interpretation. And most of the things, I like the change of materials, and I like also the change of the building is, on one hand, it's opening to the inside, and then it's, on the other hand, it's opening to the outside, and it's shifting from inside to outside and back. This is my kind of quality, or my kind of criteria that I like to see in this category. And for me, I must say, it was one of the first projects that I have to judge. And I thought, if all the projects are like this, I don't know to whom I could give the highest ratings, you know. I was a little bit surprised in the beginning.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the rest of the projects were not up to this standard, but I hope you were not disappointed by them.
No, I'm not disappointed, of course not.
No, we will see some great projects further along this session. Thank you, Martin. Tola, what stood out for you in this project?
I think what stood out the most is the fact that nature really takes kind of the dominant figure in the building. So the materials that have been used actually they're quite gray, they're quite light, and they pretty much sit in with the surrounding elements, and the greenery from the trees, the greenery that around the space pretty much take dominance. And I think that probably makes it really, really successful, because no matter which part of the rooms you're in, you're connected to that. And I think that will add to the well-being of everybody in that house. And it also demonstrates how well considered every single element, which was also demonstrated in a lot of the stuff that was submitted. I think it was one of the projects where you really saw how they thought about every single element and every material, even the joints and the flooring, the slabs that were, you could tell that every element was thoroughly considered. And I think, yeah, that's what makes this really successful and what really stood out for me.
Thank you, Tola. Bill, Martin mentioned this is a case study house, and you can find many of this kind of case study houses in the area where you live in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Does this kind of house, however, work in flat, rural, sun-deprived Holland, the Netherlands, which is a totally different environment than the sunlit, hilly countryside of LA?
I think this environment can live in those places because the sheer value of inside-outside space and transparency to the immediate environment, inside and outside each of these glass walls, I think is enticing. I mean, this project breaks the mold. You mentioned modern houses here in California, but around the world, we see them restored, we see them replaced. But this one really breaks the mold of the modern villa prototype. The diagrams for the zoning are quite strong. They really, really demonstrate the intent. But this is probably one of the hardest working projects that we've looked at. And to everyone else's comments, nature runs through and around this project. harmoniously, almost effortlessly. But I really think the cylinder, the tower, the cutout, that this makes it a much harder working villa than we're accustomed to seeing. The 2-story volume itself, with the children's room programmatically located towards the top, makes that a fun aspirational experience for the young at heart in this space. But I think the corrugated shed, which is luminous at night as some type of element, is an element of surprise. So I think it packs a lot of impact, this particular environment. And I think the other thing that is noticeable here that is perhaps not exploited as well in our most classic of modern villas, even here in Los Angeles, the edges of this floor plan are exploited for secondary uses and alternative places to go within the setting of the home. And I think that's one of the things that draws the occupants to the outside and makes this extremely successful in any nature environment around the world.
Great. Glad to hear that, Bill. There's a future for this kind of housing in Grey Holland. Kate, you just mentioned that the future of the office, of the workplace, is to become more home-like. If this is the next standard of the home, well, what would that mean for offices?
You know, it's funny, I've been reading a lot recently about biophilia and biophilic design. And when I saw this case study, I just thought, you know, it's really indicative of where things are likely to go. I really think this is where things are heading. We're all so much more interested in our own well-being. We're interested in, you know, how being within a space can actually make us feel. And I love this style of design, but I often feel I couldn't live in it. But I actually look at this and I can imagine it would be joyful to live within the space. I can imagine it would be really interesting to see how it changed from day to night. And yeah, it really captured my imagination. I think it's a real sign of things to come for sure.
So you think that offices will need to include nature to a much bigger degree?
Yeah, I really do. And I think it'll be all the more better for it. I think the example we just saw before, you know, with the amount of natural light coming within the space, I think all of these things we've realized are so important.
So to feel like being at home is to feel surrounded by nature.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, you know, I think we've gone back to basics, haven't we? We've realised things that actually make us feel well and make us feel better. And I think it is the natural world, and it is the really simple things that that designers really need to make sure that concepts include.
Thank you, Kate. This was the second honorable mention for Studio 9 Dots. Congratulations again. Let's have a look at the third honorable mention of last month. That is a multi-brand store in Seoul designed by WGNB, and the store itself is called XYTS. That's a lot of abbreviations here. As you can see, it actually won 2 honorable mentions, one in the category multi-brand store and one in the category best use of color. This total scores are pretty high and remarkably low for this project when it comes to sustainability. And maybe we can talk a little bit about that later on. So a multi-brand store in Seoul. Annika would like to kick off with you again. What does this store say about experiential retail? Everybody is talking about retail experiences, brand experiences. This is not a single brand store, but a multi-brand store. What does it say about the future of multi-brand stores when it comes to experiences?
Yeah, I think this project as a multi-brand store, it's not concentrating or focusing on one corporate brand ID, but it has to give space to several brands and still create like an expression. And I think this is very well done. This is almost like an artistic approach using this bright orange color and creating like a sculpture inside that gives like space to many different brands or products that can be exposed inside. Yeah, I think that's the strong message of this project. it's like it stands for itself, and creating like a bright stage for everything that can be like or is placed inside this stage.
It's a strong, appealing, let's say, installation, architectural installation.
Yeah, and almost artistic, like, yeah.
Thank you, Annika. Martin, I read your comments on this project, and you think that this store is sexy.
Colorful sexy, I said. Colorful sexy.
Colorful sexy. Please explain yourself.
Can I say about this quote? I think that if you look at the pictures, yeah, then you can see that this is a great. It's like a stage design for all kind of brands. That's why it is a multi-brand store, and I think it's kind of it's like a movie set or like a theater stage that you can do all this stuff, and you can make all the kind of installations for every brand that you can imagine. And I think it's very strong. And on the other side, it's also it gives space for brands to be represented.
Thank you, Martin. Then Tola, question for you. Of course, there's a very strong dominant use of the color orange here. What can you say about the use of that specific color? Why orange?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because orange, I guess, as a designer, is not a color that one would gravitate towards naturally. However, I do think there's an element of like optimism, brightness, and warmth, especially that orange radiates. So I assume this was the thinking in the DNA of designing the space. They wanted something that was unique, warm, and probably memorable. I would say that if you went into the space, you certainly wouldn't forget that you touched this very distinct color that kind of ran through. So I think, yeah, it's an unexpected choice, but a very bold and imaginative one. And I think it's one that definitely stands out, and it helps to unify all the various brands that they're carrying in the space. So it's very successful, in my opinion.
Thank you, Tola. Bill, this is a small piece of architecture. It's an architectural installation, I'd say. Is that enough these days in retail? Shouldn't the designers and this retailer not think about how to involve communities? Shouldn't that be an event space, or shouldn't it be working harder in that respect?
I don't know, Robert. That's a great question, but let's think about this. I mean, to me, what I think is groundbreaking about this project that touches upon all of the other jury comment members is that this space captures journey. This project slowed me down visually, and I imagined myself walking through this space and the quantity, the number of paths one might take. When you pull all the merchandise out of this is a great congregation space. In fact, if you pull the merchandise out and bring some objects in for people to sit on and interact in, I think it could be activated that way quite easily. And I think the strength of this, they've almost created a brand by the shape and the form and the relationship of the orange objects that anchor the middle. That orange set of volumes is agnostic. You could drop those into a shell anywhere, and the brand experience of this store is captured through color, form, and movement. And in that way, while this orange form is bold and enticing and sexy, I almost think the shell of the space, which allows it to stand so proud orange, is important as well. And in these shots that are really merchandise agnostic, you wonder, is that a living room? Is that a bar? Is that a restaurant cafe? I think this is a hard working form for more than just merchandise, but when you populate it with merchandise of various colors, the form stands on its own. I think you could pivot this to a gathering space quite easily. In fact, the only thing that's missing is a bar or a cafe at one end or nestled within it somewhere to bring that kind of activity to the shopping experience, which we know has been around for 100 years.
Thanks, Bill. Great. Kate, to come back to offices becoming like homes, if you look at one of these images here,
Mhm.
it also feels very homely here sometimes in this store. Is that a necessity for retail, this particular image?
Yeah, it does. And that, I think there is that blurring of the boundaries, isn't there, within retail? You can definitely see that coming through. I think what's particularly lovely about this concept is it has very different feels within different parts of the space. And that's quite clever when actually the store itself isn't huge. But I definitely think it's the choice of materials, it's the softness of the colours mixed with the juxtaposition of the brightness of the orange. I think definitely even the artwork on the wall, there's a sense of individuality coming through as well, which I think is very strong. But I loved this concept. I think I wrote in the comments that I loved, I've been reading a lot about some of the things that we've missed as a result of the pandemic and a result of shopping online. And online's such a linear journey. And to make the point that some of the other judges have made, I think what we miss about shopping in real life is the sense of serendipity, the sense of kind of, you know, it is non-linear, the sense that actually you would wander and you would find things that you hadn't even intended to buy. And I just like the fact that this is a concept that's almost forcing you to slow down and forcing you to shop in a different way. I think that's quite interesting.
Thanks, Kate. There's actually a question from somebody in the audience, Martijn Hogendijk. How much fashion does this shop need to sell to make a profit per square meter? That's an interesting one. Somebody willing to answer it? Probably the thinking behind the question is there's a lot of empty space here.
That's architecture photography. Nobody would pack it through with fashion and make then a photo. You need to see the architectural impact and the architectural objects that create the space, and therefore it does not have to be full with fashion stuff, I think.
Well, that's regarding the photography, but in actual life, there needs to be a lot of fashion to pay the rent and to pay the staff. So the question is it possible for this kind of shop to make even a profit?
I think it is. I think it depends upon, number one, obviously, the easy answer to get out of this is to say the price points of the merchandise would be considerably high, bespoke, couture, but let's not rely upon that because that's the easy answer. That's the crutch. If you actually think about how merchandise might be densifying the shell outside of that form, and if that form was scalable, I think there's a relationship that can be achieved with areas of higher merchandise quantity and more curated merchandise display without destroying this initial concept. And I think we're robbed of this notion because we're seeing the space photographed without merchandise, but I think it's easy to figure out how to ramp that up without destroying the concept and experience of that inner form.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
Well, and I don't mean to go on. In fact, I would argue that if someone determined that the financial model required certain zones of higher density merchandise, you might suggest that the shell is exploited in order to maintain a more interpersonal curated experience with the orange forms in the middle. I could see the argument going both ways.
Yeah, I also, this throws into question the whole thing around, we haven't got time for this question really, but the role of the store, you know, and actually a store that's designed in this way that's so iconic and so memorable, you know, the PR that drives for the brand, the awareness that it drives, the number of design blogs that will pick up this kind of concept, it's sort of like its value it grows higher when you imagine actually what it does for the brand.
So you're saying that the role of the store is not only to sell, but also to make an impact and to drive traffic online, for instance.
Absolutely, and to just drive brand awareness.
Exactly. Okay, well, we need to move on to the winner of this month. Again, double congratulations to WGNB from Seoul. Now let's have a look at the interior of the month. And the winner is the High Desert Retreat by Aitlin Darlin Design. And that is actually a residence in sort of your backyard, Bill, in Palm Desert, California, which ranks incredibly high, especially when it comes to sustainability, but also in the other criteria, it scores fairly high, almost an 8 altogether. So let's have a closer look at this project, the winning project of February, which is quite similar to a degree to the project that we have just seen, designed by Studio 9 Dots in the Dutch city of Eindhoven. Annika, so we've been talking about the case study house. How innovative is this case study house?
Oh, excuse me, I didn't get you. What?
How innovative is this case study house when compared to the other one that we've seen?
I think what makes maybe the small difference in the presentation of the project is that this one also gave some information on the sustainability and the technical aspects. And I think that is what made it just move in front as well. I think from the architectural way of treating, for example, the limits between inside and outside, it's quite comparable. But this one also gave information on how the challenges of the surroundings are treated and implemented into the design, meaning like the warm breeze from the desert passing by the water to cool down before entering the inside space, for example, the photovoltaic panels on the rooftop using the always present sunlight in this environment. So all of these aspects on the technical aspects on how sustainability is working for this project, I think is the reason why this one was voted and quoted a little bit more innovative than the other case study house we saw just before from the Netherlands.
So with a special mention for sustainability.
Yes,
yeah.
Something that was throughout all projects always a little bit difficult to understand in the project. So advice for all future submittals is to explain a little bit more about the sustainability aspects. And it can be like a material that is used. It can be a way of how like the technical aspects are treated. But this is very important to understand the innovative part of a project as well, because it's not only by the creativity, but also by those aspects that a project becomes innovative in the end.
Thank you, Annika. Martin, can you elaborate even more about the way this project is creating a rather low environmental impact?
You know, this project was for me always a kind of favorite. And I liked it not only because of its architectural impact, I also liked it because of its details. And in this case, it was very, very detailed, presented how all these sustainable ideas and sustainable functions were shown to the jury. It was well photographed, and there also was this great diagram to show all these qualities in sustainability, like, you know, shading, photovoltaics, solar power that's kept in batteries, and all this stuff, and you know, all the shading stuff. It is for me, it is a very intelligent building that plays, you know, it's in a very, very hot desert, and it plays very well with all these, you know, it's like a little bit of Arabic influence, a little bit of Mexican influence, there's a lot of impact, cultural, architectural impact in this building to make it worth and nice to live in. For me, it's actually it is one of the best, and I like it that it is the winner.
Super. I'm sure you're not the only one here, Martin. Thank you. Tola, we've been speaking about the relationship to nature and the other house. What can you say about the relationship to nature for this house?
I think what's really interesting about this is kind of like you really feel like you're being exposed to the elements. Whereas with the other house, you just saw a lot of greenery. I think with this, I feel like I'm in the middle of a jungle, but I also see a lot of rocks. I also see kind of it being quite soft with the elements of greenery. So I quite like that kind of juxtaposition maybe of like hard and kind of almost softer elements. And it almost feels like this has been designed specifically for you to be outdoors and for you to appreciate the outdoors and all of the different elements that comes with it. So yeah, I would say that's kind of more of the difference between this and the last one.
Thank you, Tola. Then Bill, coming back to the case study house in LA versus the case study house in the Dutch city of Eindhoven, is it a fair comparison? I mean, if you look at the surroundings of this house, it's all hilly. There are rocks, the sun is shining, beautiful views. None of that in Eindhoven, which is totally gray 90% of the time. So is it a fair comparison even between these two houses?
I think it is, because I think, just to build on some other comments before I directly answer you, what's beautiful and what was captivating to me, and I think the jury, about this house, it was gently placed on the earth. The siding of this building and the massing of these rectangles and squares was least disruptive to the site. And I think that speaks to part of the story around sustainability, the retaining of the tree, of the rocks on the site, that they were willing to move the form of this around. It landed gently in a very sensitive way to its surrounding environment in terms of being least disruptive or displacement of natural material. But if you were to build these two houses side by side in either region of the world that you mentioned, Robert, one house very much emphasizes nature running through it and bringing the focal point potentially to the inside of that house next to the tower. So you might argue that in climates where you don't have a view, in regions where you don't have this expansive natural landscape, you might want the focus to be more interior bent on an interior lush garden. Whereas if you had more land and view and landscape to play with, you might go for this version of the same type of modernist pavilion, which really speaks more to vistas and vantage points. And so I think, based upon the siding, the two houses can work, because to the other point that was made by Kate, I think, about the question with sustainability and biophilia, we've come to appreciate nature in a way that we knew, but maybe didn't demonstrate it as frequently during this pandemic. And I think that's going to stick for everyone returning to the world post-vaccination. But I think these two houses represent two types of prototypes that are inward focus around nature and exterior focus in nature. And they're almost the inverse of each other. And I think, as two prototypes, we should really think about how these could be applied, because in a home, you've got two models. If this was the communal area inside of an office building, a suburban office building, a workplace project, a gathering space in a hotel, I think the two prototypes here represent a paradigm of dialogue that we can apply to many project types.
Fantastic, Bill. Thank you. Last question for Kate. Kate, you're European. You're born in the UK, you live there. From, let's say, a cultural perspective, how do these two houses differ in terms of materiality, furnishings, and approach to, well, the inclusion of nature, the outlook on nature?
Bill, I absolutely adored what you were saying. I'd come to the same conclusion around the inward focus of the one in Eindhoven versus this one, where, for a moment you're thinking, is it the view that we love, or is it the interior of the space, because it's in the most exceptional surroundings, and all you're really doing is framing that picture.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, I see what you're saying about the materials as well. I think, you know, there's something, this one here is in a very rugged landscape, isn't it? And I think I like the way that this space kind of mirrors that in the choice of materials. You know, you've got things that absolutely sit side by side, and what two things blend, don't they, beautifully. I think one thing that struck me actually, just thinking about, and this is a good image just as I describe it, that the home that we saw in the Netherlands was a family home. And, you know, it went to lengths to describing how the different spaces would actually work for, you know, people of different ages and for children. And then I kind of look at this space and I see things like just, you know, crazy kind of hazards in front of me, you know, sort of like actually a very different audience almost probably being catered for with this home and being used in a very different way. I see chaos in this house with a young family, and I think, you know, the way they described the house in the Netherlands, that really resonated with me, where they were talking about, you know, the tower with where, you know, the different places where children would sleep and everything else. I thought that was a really nice way of describing things.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, everybody, and congratulations again to Aitlin Darling Design for winning the Interior of the Month award for the month of February. We've got a couple minutes left, and I would like to speak about some prevailing trends that you discovered while looking at, I think, almost 100 projects last month. What stood out for you? What kind of state is the interiors industry in at the moment? It's a very broad question.
I have to think about it.
Well, you've got exactly 2 minutes, Martin.
I think that there will be much more focus on sustainability in interior projects. And I think that people should also, or designers or architects should also give some, always they should think about how can we recycle all these materials that we use. Like, for example, it would be easy to say, if you build a house made of concrete, that's easy to recycle it. You can recycle it and bring it back again into the cycle and make new concrete out of it, or whatever. You can make some gravel for a street in Austria. We do it like this, like the building that we did in Aspen. There was a big airport field, and this was made of concrete, for example, and they destructed it, took out the old, recycled it, and built a whole bunch of buildings out of this old stuff. I think this kind of urban mining should be a much more or much deeper impact on what we design in the future and how can we go on with it.
So a greater emphasis on sustainability. I think we have spoken a lot about that while looking at last month's winning project. If I may add to the discussion, a bigger emphasis on a relationship with nature to improve our well-being. I think that can be derived from the winning projects and more than only the winning projects last month. And I've heard a couple times today a more homely approach to both workplace design, but also retail. Anything to add to this really, really brief summary from me?
I think there's something very interesting. There was a study by High Sobriety. They've just done sort of a consumer sentiment piece, and they said that 99% of respondents talked about feeling optimistic about the future now. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to see a real explosion of the use of colour, the use of very optimistic palettes, very playful design as a total response to the kind of gloom that people have lived through. So I kind of feel quite excited to see that coming through in design. I think we're going to see some very interesting concepts come forward.
Have you seen any signals of that while looking at the projects submitted to the awards program last month?
I think the colour that we were all drawn to, you know, we all found ourselves really loving that orange and almost like wondering why. But I think that was perhaps a signal. But I think in a funny way, it's a little bit early to tell right now as well. I think it's going to be in a few months' time that we start to see these things coming through.
Robert, I think there's something about scale that's going to play into scale and proportion of space, particularly in larger projects like transportation interiors, workplace environments, some of our hospitality projects. You know, you could argue by and large, looking at the body of work that this group looked at for the last month, that we're looking at everything in terms of square feet, you know, in Imperial, anything from 10,000 to 50,000 plus in size. We are seeing in our larger projects that are in the planning stages right now, a desire for the breakdown of large open space and increased need for neighborhood and pavilion-based planning approaches that break larger space down into smaller spaces as being more relatable. And I think that is something that we're going to be hearing about, speaking about, and seeing going forward as a response to making things more homey, more residential, more intimate, more comfortable. Because I think what's on everybody's mind, frame of mind, is emotional comfort in the next return to all of the types of commercial environments that we really miss being a part of. And I think scale and proportion is going to play into that critically. And I think the body of work we looked at represents a lot of the types of scale that could be very physically distant or very intimate both. Because everyone isn't going to return to just siding up to next to someone at a communal table in a bar or a cafe. It's going to take time.
That's a fantastic statement to end this session with, Bill. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tola, Kate, Annika, Martin, and Bill for being here with us and sharing your insights, your experiences while judging the Frame Award submissions last month, the month of February. Congratulations again to last month's winners. Audience, thank you for your time watching this. I hope you took home some learnings. And the only thing I wanted to share with you is that we will have another session like this coming up the 6th of April at exactly the same time, 4 p.m. Central European Time, with the jury that will be looking at Frame Award submissions in March. So hope to see you back in April when we will be discussing the winning projects of March. Thanks again for your time. Hope to see you back.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.